Welcome everyone to today's Bhagavad Gita session. Sorry, I had some urgency, so joined a little late. Uh, we'll continue from where we had left, that is chapter number 13. And we completed 34th verse, and we'll do today 35th verse. So, just a recap, in this third chapter, in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about sacrifice, cycle of sacrifice, where it's just like paying tax to the government, right? Similarly, there is a universal government. There's a universal government where we have planets, we have the controllers of the government. Just like in a country, we have water supply, electricity. So there are everything: hospital, education, defense. So there are departments for all of these. Similarly, there is a universal government where the earth is the universe, and we get water, we get rain, we get sun, the moon, we get air, we get medicinal herbs, and we perform all these things, and then uh, we have to perform sacrifice, that is by performing yajna and performing our prescribed duties, by which the demigods, which are controllers of these planets, and they are giving us air, water, fire, air, ether, sun, the moon, the light. We need all these things. So there is a cycle of reciprocation with them, and that is through sacrifice. So when we do such thing, then there will be peace and tranquility in this world. Hmm? So that's how the this chapter starts. And Arjuna had this doubt that fighting and killing my own family members is very ghastly. So in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to keep away from abominable activities. Then Arjuna was confused that I think this fighting is a very abominable activity. So how do I, how do you say that I should still do my duty? Because Krishna said you have to still do your duty, you have to fight. And therefore Arjuna had this question that you're one side you're telling me to do the duty, and another side you're telling me to keep away from abominable ghastly activities, which I think this war is also a ghastly activity. Then Krishna said we have to perform our duties, and therefore he gives this example of sacrifice, where he says everyone is performing sacrifice and the prescribed duties, and the Vedas they tell what kind of sacrifice we need to perform, and that's how the demigods they are satisfied, and they provide us with rain and provide us with everything, and that's how there is peace and tranquility in this world. uh, so we have to perform our duties, and the best way to perform our duty is if we perform our duty for the sake of our duty, not for the not for the gratification of the goal. Meaning some people they work because they get something out of it, they get salary, they get something remuneration and all that, but that is the only motivation. So Krishna says rise over this motivation and do your duty for the sake of that. Hmm? Do your duty selflessly, that is even better. In that what happens is you are detached from that work, and you are not entangled by that work. You feel a sense of fulfillment also, because Arjuna was having this problem that if I fight, if I do my duty, then I'll be very sad because I'm killing my own family members, right? But Krishna is saying you have to perform your duty. And when we I gave this example that when a policeman he sees that his brother is committing a crime, and if he thinks that, oh, my brother is involved, so I should not do anything, I should just be quiet, let him commit the crime, that is not his duty, right? His duty is to even stop his brother from committing the crime. Similarly, he tells Arjuna that your duty is to fight in this war, because this war is just. There is an evil Duryodhana on the other side, and he's not letting go of your property, and he's insulting you. He's insulted your wife, and so many times he tried to kill you also. Having such a irresponsible leader, a fighter, his duty is to get rid of such irresponsible, uh, scrupulous, people. So Arjuna, this fight is right, and if you do it for the sake of fighting, without thinking of whether you will win or lose, then you won't be entangled in this. Then you won't be entangled in this work. So that's how he teaches him how to perform his duty, just for the sake of duty in a selfless manner. And then ultimately offer the result to the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. That way you will be perfect. And then he gives few examples. Um, hmm. Then he gives examples of Janak Maharaj. This is way early in the chapter. Yeah, he gives the example of Janak Maharaj. He says he was also king, and his time is from the Ramayana time. So that is many, many thousands of years. He says many kings, just like one of them is Janak, they perform their duty without attachment. So this is the formula that Krishna gives. He says, perform your duty without attachment to the fruit of the activities, and should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So one spiritually also progresses. And he gives the example of Janak Maharaj. And he says Janak Maharaj was already a very spiritual person, and he still performed his duty. Why? For the sake of educating the people. Because people look at leaders. If the leader is bad, then the people also say, if I be bad, then what is the problem? But if the leader is setting good example, then the common man, he thinks that I need to follow. Similarly, for the common man, to they follow great actions of great people. Similarly, leaders should perform their duty, even if they are perfected in their spiritual life. Okay, so this was one of the point, and um, then Krishna said, uh, yeah, this is the last time we discussed this, that there is a psychophysical nature in us. We like to do some work, we have some dislikes and likes, we have some ambitions and goals, and that is driven. It is driven in each and every one of us. This is driving us. Okay, and therefore we are doing certain things. Like some people, they are so much into business, they're so much business minded that they have to do business. Like we see, so many engineers, they pass out, and after some years they start business, they start their own company. They are not into technicality of the code and all that, they're into business. Why? Because that whole business nature is within them. There are some people who have this daring spirit of fighting administration, so they join the army, they join politics, because it is driven with them. Then there are some people who just want to work, some work they like to do, then they will work. Okay, so this is our psychophysical nature. It is inherent in us. When we take birth, it is there in us. So we should not repress. So Krishna uses the word repress. Repress means to keep it down, or to neglect it or ignore it. We should not do that, because it is our psychophysical nature. We should allow it, and we should channel it. So therefore he says your psychophysical nature is to fight, and you are telling me that you want to beg. That is completely opposite, and you won't be able to do that. So better you do what is your nature, what is your calling, that you do, which is fighting, which is administration. So that you do. And then he says that in our duty we are very much disturbed. Why we are disturbed? Because there is attachment and aversion. Meaning, in our duty, we sometimes like certain things, we sometimes dislike the same things, or we dislike something else. And I gave this very nice example. We'll just go through it. Hmm. Like every time we see these ads of new electronic devices and all that, and then we want to have them. So like, there's a person who's want to have this electronic device, iPad or something when it came, and then he wants to show to his people, that yes, I have the latest. But after 1 year, the latest become the oldest, and another one comes. So then, person dislikes the same thing. So there's attachment and aversion for the same thing. Is disliking it. So in our duty, we face such things, and therefore Krishna says we should tolerate them. These are stumbling path. So we should tolerate this attachment and aversion, and with a equipoised mind, do our duty. Okay. So let's get into today's verse. If there are any questions or comments, you can interrupt me and ask questions. Um, I will stop and answer. Okay. Let's start with our today's verse. That is third chapter, 25th, 35th verse. Shreyan swadharmo vigunaha paradharmat swanushthita sarvadharme nidhanam shreya paradharmo bhayavaha. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though faultly, than another's duty perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duty, for to follow another's path is dangerous. So, even if we are disturbed in our duty, and it's better to continue doing that, because that is our psychophysical nature. And even if we fail over there, there will be still a sense of fulfillment. There will be still a sense of satisfaction. There will be still sense of success in it, that I tried my best. And if we have success, then we will be more satisfied, like that. Okay. Like we see, so many sports people, they take part in marathon is like, I think, 42 kilometers or something. It's a long time, like 2 hours, 3 hours it takes to run. So even though they have practiced it, it depends on that day, how is the temperature, the weather, the road, how steep it is, how difficult it is, and how their body is. It depends, on them that day, whether they will be able to complete the marathon or not. And we have seen that some people are not able to run that day. Very difficult. And we have seen such videos where, the athletes, they fail, but with the same pain, they complete that marathon. You have seen that examples? Have you seen such examples where, the sports people, even though they are hurt or something, they try to complete that round of run and all that? Have you seen that example? Any one of you? No? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you heard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so the thing is, even if there is a fault, even if there is a failure by these sports people, they they are still happy that they did it, right? Now, if the same sports person thinks that, oh, okay, I don't want to take part in Olympics and all that, it's very difficult and all that, that is not so much encouraged, right? Similarly, those who do business and all that, it is sometimes a success, sometimes a failure. But those who win over the years, right? They will say that I started this business, I started that business, I failed in it. Then after 2, 3 attempts, I succeeded, right? So, because they allowed the psychophysical nature, and even if they failed, over a period of time, they'll start having success. If not big success, small success. So, therefore, Krishna says, even though there is some fault in it, don't disregard it. Still continue trying, and you will learn over it. Okay. And here is talking to a fighter. So, what is the fighter? What is the biggest occupational hazard in fighting in a war? What is the simplest occupational hazard in a war, in a battle?
Injury.
Injury is there, and what is the
That
another? What is?
hazard is ultimately death, maybe.
Yes. See, one of the Paramveer Chakra, when he Paramveer Chakra awardee, right? He wrote a letter to his family member, and he said that death is an occupational hazard in war. Meaning, whatever occupation we do, there is some hazard over there. Like, IT industry. There, what is the hazard over there? Muscle pain, mental pain, stress, and all that. This is there. What is the hazard in say those who work physically? Some things can
Indeed.
happen. They can break the leg and all that. Similarly, in war, what in army, what is it? Death, right? So Krishna also knows that, and therefore he was the word destruction. See, in army, destruction is one of the biggest hazard, right? And he's telling, even if that happens, it is still better than avoiding it, right? Like we say, right? You must have heard this pagoda. Instead of running away from the battlefield, you should face it, and even if you die, there is glory. So if you hear the stories of fighters, you will see this. So Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita, that you have to still perform your duty, and even if you fail in it, or if there is less success in it, don't worry. You will be at least satisfied. I tried, right? Any experience of this verse in your own life? Any example that you want to share where you tried and it didn't work, but later on, anyone?
May I share, sir?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
Prabhuji, actually, I was into the this uniformed forces in NCC, and I injured my knee during a course, and
Hmm.
so I was like, there was no. They were not saying anything whether I could go home, or I was just kept there. But somehow I managed to complete the course. Only I
Hmm.
could not give two exams, that is the running and the drill. Although I was
Right.
there, the physical test I could not give, but all other tests I gave. After
Hmm.
that, I injured in the first week, and the course was of 4 weeks, the second course for my next track. So
Hmm.
I said, like, if they don't send me, then I have to be here. So, but I used to have a lot of issues because the doctor used to shout, and then the training officer used to shout and all. But somehow I finished, and again, in the theory I stood first only, but
Hmm.
overall also I got a second ranking in that course. So it was
Okay.
like I wanted to do my duty because I felt I have come here, left my family, and instead of
Yes.
whining away and all, let me do what best I can do. So
Yeah.
wherever I could contribute, in terms, even with that injury, I would contribute, like culture programs, hai, writing, hai, magazine, hai. So I would be doing all those things. So
Right.
ultimately, that was fun.
Good.
Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. Very nice example. See, even babies, they also try. They also try to crawl. They also try to walk, and eventually they start walking. Right. So this is the thing that we should try, and even if there is some failure and all that, we should still try, and that is our nature. We should not allow to repress it. You know, like that. Let's get in the purport. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duty in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. What is prescribed for others is not meant for us. Hmm? Materially prescribed duties are duties enjoyed according to one's psychophysical nature. I'm talking about this psychophysical nature under the spell of modes of material nature. Like I talked, some are very business minded, some are very administrative minded, some are just there to work. Any work is given, they like to do. Spiritual duties are as ordered by spiritual master for transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to the death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duty. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on material platform may be different, but principles of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules of his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahmana who is in mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in mode of passion is always violent, is allowed to be violent. As such, for Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahmana who follows the principle of non-violence. So, a fighter, he is violent, So if he tries to be, non-violent, then that is not good for him. Only in very rare circumstances that he can be non-violent. Otherwise, most of the time he has to be violent. And violence means necessary violence to protect the weak from the evil. For that, one has to be violent. Okay? Everyone has to cleanse his heart by gradual process, not abruptly. See, when we perform a duty, and whether we succeed or fail or whatever, or partially succeed and all that, what is happening to our heart is that it is cleansing. What is that cleansing means? That we are becoming dutiful. We are detaching from success and failure concepts. We are more into endeavor, and um, that makes us what you say, detached from this world and enjoyment of this world, and then we can be spiritually situated also. Okay, so that is the cleansing process that is happening if one follows uh, his psychophysical nature and continues to do his duty. However, when one transcends the mode of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of the spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana or a Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. So this can happen. We can change roles only when we reach very high spiritual platform. At this point, we are not there, so we should follow what is our psychophysical nature. In transcendental stage, the distinctions of material world does not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally Kshatriya, but later on acted as a Brahmana. Whereas Parshuram was Brahmana, but later on he acted as Kshatriya. Being transcendental situated, he could do so, but as long as on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have full sense of Krishna consciousness. So till we are not spiritually very advanced, we should not abruptly change our role. Like sometimes, some people think that spirituality means leave everything and go away. No, we are reading Bhagavad Gita, which is the highest spiritual book in the Vedas. And after hearing Bhagavad Gita, what did Arjuna do? Did Arjuna stop fighting or he fought? Yes, he fought. So the spiritual duty is that whatever duty we have, if we perform it in the right consciousness, then also it is spiritual. Okay, so that is the key. What is the attitude behind it? So one of the example I took here is um, yeah, like Krishna, sorry, Arjuna had this issue, right? That fighting is abominable. Is it bad or good? Can you tell me, is fighting good or bad? I've shown two examples here. What is your thought? Is fighting good or bad?
The first picture is good because the intent is for
Yeah.
protection of the nation.
Yes.
And the second one, the intent is terrorism. So,
Terrorism. Yeah. It's like unnecessary violence. It is
yeah,
merciless violence. Whereas when it is done out of duty, it is for protection. And the second one is it is not done out of duty. It
to
is just
create fear,
senseless.
fear and
Yeah. See, another example I took. We see knife in the hand of two people. So is knife good or bad?
what you perform with it.
Yeah. So on the left hand side, we see it in the hand of a doctor. So we are not worried. We know it is used for surgery. But on the right hand side, we see it in the hand of a thief. And then we'll be worried, because thief, his intent is to harm us. While with the same knife, the intent of the surgeon is to cure us. So the intent matters. So Arjuna thought this killing is bad. But Krishna is saying the intent is the most important thing. What is your consciousness? What is your attitude? That is more important than the activity itself. Does that make sense? Does it make
Absolutely. Yeah.
okay? Okay, good. Okay, any question or comment, you can interrupt me. Okay, so now Arjuna understands. Okay, intent is very important. But sometimes, even with the right intent, we are not able to perform it. We are forced within ourselves to perform the wrong thing, right? We know that this is the right thing to do, but within our body, it is forcing us to do the wrong thing. Why? And this is Arjuna's question. Arjuna Uvacha Athakena Prayukto Yam Papam Charati Purushaha Anichena Api Varshneya Balat Eva Niyojitaha. O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful activity, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? What he's asking is, I know what is right, what is wrong, and people also know what is right, what is wrong. Like a criminal also knows what is right, what is wrong. But within his body, something is forcing him to do the wrong thing. What is that thing? What is that thing? And Krishna will explain. The living entity as part and parcel of Supreme is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all contaminations. So the answer to this is Krishna says it is lust only. Lust means there is an enjoying tendency to unrestrictedly enjoy, to overpower this material world. Okay, that is lust. Okay,
I have a question.
okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
But suppose when you see sometimes small children, they are hunger. There is hunger, and they rob something like so. If there is an intense hunger or poverty, and sometimes so how that I mean, if that robbing is to fulfill,
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I have this dilemma
Sure,
whether
sure.
dying without having that small child is going to want to survive. So
Yeah.
that
So let's see this. Um, historically, this has been a problem that sometimes police find that children steal. They steal from shops and all that, and then it goes to the court and the judge. He has to take a decision, and many a times the judge they see for the past, like why, what is the reasoning of this person stealing. And when they find that it is out of hunger, out of abject hunger, out of dire necessity, then they reduce the sentence. Or sometimes they just uh, free the person, free the children. You know that? Have you heard these things? All over the world, in the justice system, they see for the what was the motive. And if they think that the motive is not something very severe or sinful, then they reduce the statement. They reduce the punishment drastically. So what you say is right. For dire needs and something, someone may be forced. But what Arjuna is asking here is that um, if say this is something even higher than hunger. Okay, this is something where, let's say, rich people, they commit some crime. Say they don't give taxes, or they bribe somebody and all that. There may be reasons for it, but sometimes the reason is what, I want to be the greatest, I want to be more rich, like that. So the enjoying tendency is very much strong. The motive was not that, um, the motive was not, or let's say the motive was, it was something, uh, uh, what you say, something that could have been controlled.
that was controlled on pleasure, or
Yeah,
it
it
was
it was an impetus
too
which was not
materialistic.
necessary.
It was
It was not
materialistic.
necessary to do.
Yeah, it was not.
Yeah,
Not
because we see this.
that is, as you say, as that is pointed out in the purport, that it should not be lust of any
Yeah,
kind. Then
yeah. So
then
lust
the
means like that. Lust is where there is a enjoyment more than necessary.
yes,
It's unrestricted. That's why I use the word unrestricted.
right.
So this is what Arjuna is asking. What is that thing that is pushing us, and then how to control it? Because in our duty, in our performing duty, right, we are being forced, and sometimes we are being forced by negative. thoughts and negativity, right? So basically, he's asking, what is that negativity that is forcing me? And Krishna answers, it is lust. In the later chapters, Krishna gives much more example. Um, let me let me find for you. There are three gates to hell. Um, Krishna says, yeah. In this verse, he says, Trividdhi narkshema, dwaram nashanam atmana, kama krodhas tatha lobhas, tasmad etat trayam tvajet. So this is much later, um, 16th chapter. So 16.21, Krishna gives what are the three things that are forcing us. So definitely he says lust is there. Second, he says anger and greed. These are three things leading to hell. Lust, greed, anger, and greed. So every sane man should give up this. That for that will lead to the degradation of soul. So when the motivation is greed, when the motivation is anger, when the motivation is lust, then um, then the activity is sinful, it is criminal, it is very punishable. Okay. So we are in the third chapter where the lust is dealt with. Hmm? And how that lust comes is um, is explained in the first few sentences here. That the living entity is spiritual. See, we are spiritual. We are we are spirit, and the body is changing. And after death, we take new bodies. So we are spiritual. We never die. But what happens is when we come in contact with the material body, then we get influenced by those modes. We get influenced by those modes. What are those modes? Rajagun, Tamagun, and Sattvagun. Mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And in that influence, we get into lust, greed, and anger. And that creates big, big problems for us. Okay. So, where are we? So this is what is getting explained here. The living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, free from material contamination. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to sin of the material world. But when he comes contact with the material nature, he acts in a sinful way without hesitation and sometimes even against his will. Like sometimes, too much of money makes people mad, right? This is very common thing that we see in this world. Too much of money, people get very mad. They think I can do anything. Like recently in the news, right? Um, this is the mafia. There's a mafia in UP, Uttar Pradesh, and his son got so angry that he took out a pistol and he went and he killed a person on the road, and all the CCTV got caught. And just 1 or 2 days back, he got killed also by the police, right? Then such madness is there, right? They're driven by that anger, they're driven by greed, they're driven by lust, and that creates big big problems. So this is what Arjun is asking. As such, Arjuna's question to Krishna is very sanguine. As per the perverted nature of the living entity, although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the super soul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord will explain in the next verse. So it is not that God is impelling us to do some sinful act. No. What is the reason? The three modes, the material nature. So we'll get into it. श्री भगवान वाच कामयेश क्रोधेश रजोगुण समुद्भवा महाशनो महापाप्मा वित्ति एनम वैरिणम. The Supreme Person of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is all devouring sinful enemy of this world. So when passion is there and this mode is influencing us, then there is two things: lust and krodha, which Kama esha, krodesha, wrath. Wrath is anger. Okay? So two things they come in us. First is I want to enjoy, and if there is something which is stopping me, then I will get angry, right? So these two things, they force us to do sinful activity. When a living entity comes in contact with material creation, his eternal love for Krishna is transformed into lust in association with the modes of passion. In other words, the sense of love for God becomes transformed into lust, as milk is contact with a sour tamarind is transformed into yogurt. See, milk is pure, right? But the moment it touches tamarind, then it becomes yogurt, right? And then it cannot go back. Can yogurt turn back to milk? No. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion. Illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of living entity, and it is lust only which induces a pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is a manifestation of mode of ignorance, and these modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries. If therefore the mode of passion, instead of being degraded in the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by prescribed method of living and acting, then one can be saved from degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. So, what is the solution then? The solution is to rise in the mode of goodness. So, if we are trained and if we perform activities and if we make an environment of mode of goodness, then we can rise from this passion and ignorance. And that can save us from lust and anger and greed. Um, have you heard about this alcoholic anonymous organization where people are treated for addiction to alcohol? Have you heard about this organization?
Yes.
So what they do over there is when they allow when they know these people when they come, the first thing is they say no more alcohol. Second thing they say is that you will share your heart in this group, and you will understand that you need help. You need help to overcome this. So such an environment is created where they are allowed to be trained, they are allowed to be de-addicted, and then the same person who was drinking so much, in few months or years, he just gives up drinking. And there are many examples of that. So that mode of goodness has to be cultivated. Then all this anger and greed can be given up. And in the 14th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, this whole details are there about the three modes. The 14th chapter, the three modes of material nature. More details are there. When we reach there, we will get into it. For now, let's read this. The Supreme Person God explained, expanded himself to many of his ever increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are part and parcel of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of that independence, when the service attitude is transformed into propensity for sense enjoyment, they come in the sway of lust. So it's our misuse of our independence. We have some independence. We have some power to make a choice. So if we get misused by influence of bad association, then we'll come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility for the conditioned soul to fulfill their lustful propensities. And when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire about their real position. So in this material world, right, we go through this enjoyment and suffering and attachment and aversion, and then finally we come to know that the enjoyment in this world is temporary and it is giving more pain than pleasure. The moment we come to know, we turn to spirituality. And the first thing that we should do in spirituality is this inquiry is the beginning of Vedanta Sutra, which is called Athayato Brahma Jigyasa. Now inquire into the supreme. See, our whole day we are inquiring into various other things: medicine, food, stock exchange, where is the transport, this, that. But now we have to add one more question to it. What is spirituality? Who is the supreme? Who am I really? What is this world? All these questions. And then we enter into spirituality. The supreme is defined in the Bhagavatam as Janmadhyasya Anya Itaradas. The origin of everything is the supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of lust is also in the supreme. If therefore origin lust is transformed into love for the supreme and or transformed into Krishna consciousness. So we can transform this lust into love. And in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the greatest servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning golden city of Ravana. So one example is given as Hanuman. So he tried to save Sita, right? Then Ravana caught him, tried to burn his tail, but with that same tail, he burned the whole Lanka. Everyone knows this story. Now that burning of Lanka was out of his anger, but it turned out to be a great service to Lord Ram, and it is approved by everyone that this is the right thing to do. you know, so right use of anger when it is done, then that service is right. Like for fighting, you need to have anger, right? Um, we are taking this example of fighting because Bhagavad Gita is about this fighter Arjuna. So if they have to fight, they have to fight with anger. Without anger, you cannot fight. Have you seen a fight without anger? No, that is not a fight. So some anger is needed. If you channelize it rightly, then then it is glorious. Then it is not lust. So if we use it in the right purpose, then it is greatest. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, which when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. So spirituality means to know how to engage our lust and wrath and greed in the service of the Supreme Lord. Just like Hanuman. His anger, he used it in the service of God and he became great devotee. Whereas Ravana, he used it in his own sense gratification and he had to die. This is another great verse. धूमेन आवृत्ते वाहिनीर यथ यथादृशो मलेन च यथोल बनव्रतो गर्भस तथा तेनिदम आवृतम. As fire is covered by smoke, as mirror is covered by dust, and as embryo is covered by womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. So this lust is there in our body. And interestingly, Krishna says where exactly it is. In the very next verse, he says, it is in the senses, mind, and intelligence. All of these are sitting places of lust. And we are covered by it. And there are various degrees of cover. Just like a fire is covered by smoke. How thick is the smoke? Very thin, right? Sometimes the smoke is very thin. So, and how, if have you seen a mirror which is covered by dust? It's a very thin layer of dust. And an embryo is covered by womb. How big is the layer around the embryo? That is very thick, right? So similarly, sometimes the lust within us is covering us by thin layer or thick layer or medium layer, like that. These are the three degrees of covering the living entities by which pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestation like smoke in fire, dust on mirror, and a womb about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood the fire of the living entity can be little perceived. So if the lust is like a smoke, then it is very less. In other words, when the living entity exhibits Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to be fire covered by smoke. So one can easily come to spirituality if the lust is very so much thin. Although the fire is necessary when there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. Now the question is how to get rid of this lust. So by the spiritual method, we have to get rid of the lust. I'll give you an example. Let's finish this reading and I'll give you an example. The best process is to chant the holy names. Actually, this is the example. Best process is to chant the holy names. And I'll give you much more better examples. Once let me finish this. The embryo is covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position. So embryo covered by the womb, if the lust is too thick, right, then it is very difficult to come to spirituality. But still, by the power of holy name, one can spiritually advance. And we'll take an example and we'll end it. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. So trees, trees, animals, they are not interested in spirituality. By the very nature of their body, they are there. The trees also living entities, but they are put in such condition of life by such great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, while the smoke covered fire is compared to human beings. In the form of human beings, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness and he make further development. The fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire, fire can be made to blaze. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence. In the human form of life, one can conquer the enemy lust by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So, few points are mentioned. Let me take this. Um, Three things are mentioned here. Lust, if it is, like a smoke. So here, human beings come, where the lust is very small. Right? The lust is covered by dust. Here is where animals, birds, they come. And if it is covered by, whom, that means lust is very strong. Then, we are almost like non-moving living entities, like trees. So spirituality is best practiced in the human form. Why? Because very less covering is there. Okay. But how one can overcome it? So very last sentence is there. By cultivation Krishna consciousness under able guidance. So I told you I'll give you one example. Um, who wrote Ramayana? What is his name? Valmiki Rishi, right? In his previous life, he was Ratnakar. Ratnakar was a dacoit, stealing person. He would kill people. And then one day he met Narad Muni, a very, very advanced devotee, pure devotee of the Lord. Huh? And then Narad Muni, in his association, he understood that what he was doing was wrong. And under his guidance, he asked, how can I become pure? This lust is covering me. For him, it was covered like an embryo, very thick, because he had done so many sinful acts. Huh? So then Narad Muni said, if you chant the holy name. What holy name did he suggest to chant to Valmiki? Anyone? We're talking about Ramayana.
Mara.
Ram. Yeah. So he said, chant the holy name of Lord Ram. And I'll tell you more about it. But then he was so sinful that he couldn't chant. So, he was chanting instead of Ram, he was chanting Mara. And then Narmuni said, okay, for you an adjustment, you start with Mara. And for many years, he kept saying Mara, Maram, Ram, and then it became Ram. And by chanting the holy name of the Ram, from a dacoit, he became a rishi, a sage. A sage means he's a very pure person. And he got transformed. Now, what happens when we chant the holy name? So, holy name, what it does is it purifies our heart of lust, greed, and anger. Just like, a dirty water is purified in our aquaguard, right? Similarly, holy name purifies our heart of lust, greed, anger. And it transforms us from a dacoit to a sage, makes us more saintly. How does the holy name do that? Anyone has this question? How does it do that? Do they want to hear? Do you want to hear? How does the holy name do that? Yes, no? I think yes. So, the holy name, one may think, is it just a word? Because it's what we are just chanting Ram. Ram is just a word. I mean, does a word cleanse us? Right? Have you heard about this? Does it cleanse us? How can it cleanse us? Any word can it cleanse us? Then can Coca-Cola be holy name or Pepsi? No, right? So what is holy name? Holy name is name of Lord Krishna, and it is spiritual in nature. Spiritual means it is not matter, and it is non-different than the person. What I mean is, let's take the example water. Now, if you want to quench your thirst, you can keep saying water, water, water. Does it quench your thirst? No, because you need the object. You need the object water to quench your thirst. So the object and name of object are two different things in this world, right? This is called as material world. A material world are two different things. Whereas the holy name is spiritual world, is a spiritual word, and it is same and non-different than the person. This is the difference between a spiritual word and a material word. Now, the material word is two different things. The object and the name of the object are two different things. Whereas the holy name, it is same. The person and the name of the person is same. No? That is spiritual word. So the name Ram or the name Krishna is non-different than Krishna, non-different than Lord. They are personally present. So when someone says Krishna, when someone says Ram, they are personally present on our tongue, in our ear, in our heart. And when such a spiritual personality, supreme personality, comes in contact with us, then there is no darkness, there is complete light. If you bring a light, a bulb in a dark room, does it remain dark? No, right? Similarly, when the holy name comes in our heart, all the dirt, we have three dirts: lust, greed, and anger. They all are go away. They're all darkness, so they'll go away. So this is how the holy name cleanses our heart. And the example is Valmiki Rishi. And then if we take to the holy name, it will does the same thing to us. Lust, greed, and anger, it will reduce. Ultimately, one will spiritually advance. So this is the key, that we should chant the holy name of Lord Krishna under the guidance of a spiritual master like Narad Muni, or in the disciplic succession of Narad Muni. So that is the key. So this is how we get rid of lust, greed, and anger. So let's open up for some question or comment. Any question or comment? Any question? Any question you have?
No, Prabhuji. I don't have any
Okay.
question.
Okay. Okay. So let's stop here. And